friends, I am Arpit and I am here with today's analysis. Today is 9th of February and we are going to deal with two very important topics which are news. Subcategorization in scheduled castes, the case in Supreme Court. A question was asked from the Supreme Court judges that whether those IAS, IPS officers belonging to the scheduled caste categories, their children should be given reservation or not. The answer to this question by the judges was that they should not be given. Actually, in the scheduled caste category, if one generation has taken the benefit of it, the future generations also keep on taking the benefit of that particular caste. But there are some categories in scheduled caste which are devoid of such benefits. Therefore, the generations are also devoid, leading to a hierarchy among them. So, this should not be there or it should be there is the case in point in the Supreme Court presently, and the Supreme Court is going to decide on whether the poorest of the poor or the most backward sections in the scheduled caste category should be given special emphasis in reservation or not. Next is high level committee on population growth, the path it should follow. This committee was or has been recommended by the finance minister in the recent budget that this committee should be formed. Now, population is basically a double-edged sword. On one side, it has benefits attached to it, like it generates domestic demand, which has kept our economy growing and growing till now. Whereas on the other hand, it exerts pressure on the resources. The resources which are less, resources like fresh water are depleting due to global warming or climate change. And in all this, we need to find a solution which can create a harmonious balance between population growth and the resources. Now let's get started with the first topic, that is subcategorization in scheduled castes, the case in Supreme Court. A 7-judge bench has been there set up under the leadership of Chief Justice D.Y. Chandrachud. And presently what they've done, they have reserved their judgment in the sub-classification among scheduled caste case. They want to hear more on this. And then they will be coming on to a judgment. Now, some states actually have come up with this to the Supreme Court that, there should be subcategorization. Actually, why the states have come up? Because in 2004, there was a judgment in the Supreme Court which nullified or which cancelled the subcategorization among scheduled castes. And it also said that the president is only empowered to include any community in the scheduled caste list or not, according to Article 341 of the Constitution. Now the states have come up with a challenge to that particular judgment. The states have argued that despite reservation, some castes are grossly underrepresented in comparison with the so-called dominant scheduled caste. Dominant scheduled castes are those ones which have taken benefit of reservation. And their future generations are also taking benefit of the reservation. So it is like this. And the ones who have not taken, they are deprived. So the states have come up that because we are there at the grassroots level, we know that which communities are deprived and which communities have taken advantage. So we should be allowed to identify those communities. They want to create a separate quota for such castes, those who are more deprived, within the SC quota of 15%, to ensure that, benefits are adequately distributed. Actually, the purpose of reservation was this only. Adequately distribute the benefits among the deprived sections of the society. Now, in that deprived section of the society, some subsection have taken the benefits, some have still not taken the benefits, in all, I would say, defying the purpose of reservation. So the states have come up that those people in the scheduled caste who have not got the benefits, they should be given some priority or they should be, identified separately. Now the case I was talking about in 2004 in the Supreme Court is E.V. Chennaiya versus State of Andhra Pradesh. Now this is the case under scanner right now. Now in 2004, a 5-judge constitution bench in this particular case, E.V. Chennaiya versus State of Andhra Pradesh, held that only the president could notify which communities could receive reservation benefits as per Article 341 of the Constitution, and that states did not have the power to tamper with this. So one thing, it was identified that under Article 341, only the president is empowered, states are not. In this E.V. Chennaiya versus State of Andhra Pradesh, the Supreme Court struck down the Andhra Pradesh Scheduled Caste Rationalization of Reservations Act 2000 for being violative of the right to equality. Actually, in 2000, the Andhra Pradesh government passed a law. And according to that law, they were identifying the most vulnerable sections in the scheduled caste and giving them special emphasis for having access to those benefits. Now, this particular law was in question in this E.V. Chennaiya case, and Supreme Court struck down this law, stating that it is violating right to equality. Right to equality of whom? The Supreme Court said that all the communities listed in the scheduled caste list, some are not given priority according to this law, some are given priority. So this violates the right to equality. That is why this law is proved to be null and void, and hence all the communities in the scheduled caste list should be treated equally. In effect, subcategorization nullified. Now, number of states have moved the Supreme Court to argue against this E.V. Chennaiya versus State of Andhra Pradesh judgment. Now, if I go into the background, another state, that is the state of Punjab, it actually created this subcategories for the scheduled castes in the year 1975. The law made by Andhra Pradesh, subcategorization in Andhra Pradesh, was in 2000. So 25 years before this, in 1975, the Punjab government already did it. And it created two categories in the scheduled caste. In the first category, there were seats reserved solely for the Balmiki and the Mazhabi Sikhs community. These are scheduled caste communities, but these were considered to be more vulnerable among the scheduled caste. So in this first category, special seats were reserved for them only. Another policy, they were to be given first preference for reservation in education and public employment. Now this was subcategorization, and why subcategorization was being done? To give them priority in employment and education. In the second category of scheduled caste, the rest of the SC communities were there, which were not to be given this priority, which the Mazhabi Sikhs and the Balmiki community had to be given. Subcategorization in Andhra Pradesh also happened in 2000. So both these things, or both these states, can be taken into the background. This was challenged in the E.V. Chennaiya case, which we just saw. In E.V. Chennaiya versus State of Andhra Pradesh, the Supreme Court struck down the Andhra Pradesh Scheduled Caste Rationalization of Reservation Act 2000 for being violative of right to equality. We've already seen this. 2 years after this, means this happened in 2004. 2 years after this, in 2006, the Punjab and Haryana High Court in Dr. Kishan Pal versus State of Punjab struck down the 1975 notification issued by the Punjab government. Punjab government did not pass a law in 1975. It only passed a notification. Now that notification was also struck down by taking reference of the E.V. Chennaiya case by the Punjab and Haryana High Court. In October 2006, 4 months after this Punjab and Haryana High Court judgment, the Punjab government passed a law this time. The Punjab Scheduled Caste and Backward Classes Reservation and Services Act 2006, reviving that subcategorization being given to the Balmiki community and the Mazhabi Sikhs. But in 2010, the High Court once again struck down this provision. The Punjab government then moved the Supreme Court. So this is what the background is, and the litigations with respect to the laws or any, I would say, resolutions passed by the governments. Now, why the Supreme Court is considering the Chennaiya case now? We need to understand this. Although there were litigations, but yes, there were some other cases also which we should see. In 2014, Supreme Court in Dividend Singh versus State of Punjab referred the appeal to a 5-judge constitution bench to determine if the 2004 E.V. Chennaiya decisions required reconsiderations or not. So in 2014, this litigation by Punjab in the Supreme Court was referred to a higher bench or a larger bench to decide on it. In 2020, the Constitution Bench headed by Justice Arun Mishra held that the court's 2004 decision required reconsiderations. He clearly said this, that it required reconsiderations. The ruling noted that the court and the state cannot be a silent spectator and shut its eyes to the stark realities. What are the stark realities? The stark realities are that some communities in the scheduled caste are well off, some communities are still struggling, and this stark reality should be addressed. Then only the I would say exact purpose of reservation would be fulfilled. This is something which needs to be taken into account. So this is what this 2020 constitutional judgment, so I would say the constitution bench said. That is why the Supreme Court now is hearing on this particular case. Also, we need to follow this case very closely, see the developments what are going to happen, because all these developments are going to have a direct bearing on the articles of the constitution in the fundamental rights, like article 16, article 15, article I would say 14 as well, this right to equality. And if subcategorization will be done, on what basis it will be done. Since a 7-judge bench headed by the CJI is there, so I believe that some concrete thing is going to happen. Similar kind of news we picked up a few weeks ago when we were talking about the Madiga community in Andhra Pradesh, where the center is talking about providing benefits to them in a better way, because they have been deprived for many years. And in that video only we talked about that the Supreme Court is going to hear on this subcategorization topic. So the Supreme Court has now started hearing on this. Okay, so closely keep following the developments in this particular case. I have laid the background by doing this, and it is now your prerogative to follow it. Any developments in this, definitely I will be taking up in brief in the future videos as well. Now next is High Level Committee on Population, the path it should follow. Now in this basically interim budget, the finance minister announced that a high level committee will be there to consider the challenges arising from the rising population. Now population is basically beneficial on one side because it generates demand. Demand generates products, the GDP keeps on growing, the economy keeps on flourishing. On the other hand, it exerts pressure on the resources as well. And that pressure actually can lead to sustained poverty, sustained hunger. It can also lead to violent clashes. So the theme is that population growth should be there and it should be sustainable, so that it is able to strike a balance between the pressure on the resources and the economic growth on the other side. So this is what the main job of this committee is going to be. What would be the purpose of this body? It is to make recommendations on how to address these challenges in line with the goal of Viksit Bharat. Viksit Bharat, developed India, 2047 is the target. And obviously population growth or the population will play a very vital role in deciding whether we are a developed country or not. And this committee will need to look into the needs and wants of the population. If the needs and wants of the population are met, are fulfilled, definitely we will be developed, or we will be calling ourselves developed. But if the needs and wants of this population is not fulfilled, means there is no adequate food to eat, we will not call ourselves developed. Or there is no proper per capita income, we cannot call ourselves developed. So there has to be a balance between population growth and economic growth. This is what this committee is going to ensure. What kind of issues it will address? It will address family planning, maternal and child health, because this is very much important. Maternal health means when a lady becomes pregnant, during pregnancy, post pregnancy, what is her health? The maternal mortality rate should come down. Child health, infant mortality rate should come down. Child should get adequate nutrition. The mother should also get adequate nutrition. Then, the child should get immunization. The mission Andhra or intensified mission Indradhanush is there right now. When I talk about education, as and when education levels increase, the birth rates or the total fertility rates come down, leading to a more sustainable population growth. So this will play a key factor, and an educated workforce will be more skillful, will have the potential to earn more money, will be more employable, and it will lead to more socio-economic development. These all kind of issues will be addressed by this particular committee. To do so, the population committee must adopt an interdisciplinary approach. It should not only focus itself to population growth. It should also focus itself on multiple other factors related to population growth like education, healthcare, nutrition, all these things. So then only I would say it will be successful. Now, how has India's population growth been till now? Now we have this data from 1901, like from the 20th century onwards, we can say, and how it has been now. So we've divided it into three phases: 1901 to 1951, these 50 years. The population growth rate was low. The reason for this population growth rate being low was birth rate was high, and so was the death rate. Birth rate high and death rate high. Actually, this happens in least developed societies or very less developed societies, underdeveloped societies. Birth rate high due to less awareness, less education levels. Death rate high due to malnutrition, hunger, unavailability of good medical facilities and all. So people contracting, very simple diseases like malaria and all, they are also dying. These are characteristics of least developed, I would say, societies. Now in this period, one decade, that is 1901 to 1921, saw a negative growth. Means the population counting in the 1921 census, that population was less than the 1911 census. And this had happened for the first time in the history of India, and this has happened for only once in the history of India. No census apart from this census has seen a negative growth in population growth rate. Every census we see a population growing, but here in 1921 census we saw the population declining. The reason for that was Spanish flu, a pandemic at that time which killed around 12.5 million people in the country. So it was like this, and we did not have adequate measures to deal with such kind of pandemic. Then the next phase, 1961 to 1981, at that time population growth rate was very high, 2.2% year on year growth it was. It is considered as high, very high actually. Now in this phase, the birth rate remained high, but the death rates started to decline. This decline in death rate started to happen because of improved medical facilities, improved nutrition. The birth rate remained high because it is very difficult to alter reproductive attitudes. Reproductive attitudes are not altered, in a short span of time. It takes long term. So that is why the birth rates remained high and the death rates reduced. Now this was termed as the state of population explosion, where the birth rate remained high and the death rate came down. We know the reasons why birth rate remained high and death rate came down. 1991 onwards till now, the population growth rate is considered as high. Okay. It is less than this particular category, 2.2% it was year on year. Now it is on an average 1.89%. The birth rates are high, but they are less than this stage. The death rates have further lowered because there is more improvement in medical services, there is more improvement in availability of nutrition and all. Like yesterday only we saw, or day before yesterday, in one of the videos we saw the CAR T cell therapy, indigenously developed technology to tackle cancer. So these kind of medical advancements are taking place now also, which is leading to further decline in death rate. And people are becoming more and more educated and aware. So the birth rate has also started to reduce. But it is still very high, I would say, if I consider the entire population. So India is presently over here in this particular stage, where the growth rate, population growth rate is high, and that is why that committee has been formed. That population growth rate should not be unsustainable. It should be sustainable. Now, this demographic transition, is it leading to demographic dividend? Demographic dividend is basically can be defined as when you are taking profit, dividend means profit, out of your demography. And this will only happen when the maximum of your workforce is in the working age group. But here is the catch. By merely placing maximum workforce in the working age group, can we reap the demographic dividend? It is not the case. What if you have not skilled your working population? What if you have not created ample opportunities, employment opportunities for your working age population? Maximum proportion is there in the working age population, but if the atmosphere is not good for them, if there are no opportunities for them, if there are no skills in them, then demographic dividend will not be reaped. These are the youth. They will start to adopt crime like things. So demographic dividend, instead of being reaped, demographic disaster will happen. So in India's situation, the total fertility rate, TFR or total fertility rate can be defined as the average number of births a woman gives birth to in during her, childbearing age. Childbearing age is generally considered 15 to 49 years. So roughly, how many births a woman is giving, how many children a woman is giving birth to. Now, it is projected to touch 1.73 in 2031 to 35. It was 2.5 in 2009 to 11. Now, this total fertility rate is reducing. Now, what happens over here? In this demographic transition, decreasing proportion of the child population will happen and increasing proportion of the working age population will happen. Because less number of children are being born. Those who are born earlier, they will be entering the working age population. 15 years is the working age population it starts. The demographic dividend resulting from a sustained drop in fertility rates and an increased concentration of the population in the working age group. Because see, demographic dividend, first precondition is the maximum proportion of your population should be in the working age group. Okay. Presents an opportunity for accelerated economic growth per capita. It presents an opportunity for us to reap the demographic dividend. It is not a guarantee that we will reap the demographic dividend. Guarantee means if our maximum population is in the working age group, it is not a guarantee that we will be reaping the demographic dividend. We will only be reaping the demographic dividend if that maximum population in the working age group will be having access to more and more jobs, employment opportunities, skills or entrepreneurship, good business environment. This is what the government has to create. Realizing this potential necessitates investments in health, education and skill development. If the government is, if the population is educated, if the population is healthy and if the population has skill, then only demographic dividend will be reaped effectively, else it will not be reaped. This has to be understood very clearly. Now, challenges in health and education and skill development. There are challenges. Obviously, a country like India or any country for that matter cannot work without challenges. First is there is less budgetary allocation for health. India spends around 1% of its GDP on healthcare. Obviously, this requires more and more investments. Now, in India, 91% of the workforce is in the unorganized sector. In the unorganized sector, you don't get paid leaves or sick leaves. You don't go to work, your income will be deducted. It is as simple as that. So, we need a healthy population which can earn more, which can contribute more in economic development. A healthy population will have a healthy mind, new ideas, new ways of contributing will be there. Lack of nutritional security. Hunger and malnutrition leads to impaired cognitive and physical development. This is true. If, the development of the brain is not proper, you will not be able to work well. And this happens due to proper nutrition during the formative years especially. And your physical development will also be impaired. And both these are necessities for economic development. You'll be having a less productive workforce if the cognitive and physical developments in the workforce is impaired or if they are less. Then lack of necessary skill sets. Now, what if, the population or the workforce does not have the necessary skill sets required for the present time? Now, there's a data or there's a findings by UNICEF. They say that nearly 47% of Indian youth may lack the necessary education and skills for employment by 2030. This will be lacking in them. And this is something which is obviously not required. Disruptions by COVID happened. Now, when COVID came, around 250 million children in India dropped out of schools. Most of them are not willing to go back. We have lost the workforce of the future, or we have lost an educated workforce for the future. The government needs to look into these kind of challenges and address them timely. So that is a very big challenge. Poor learning outcomes. Now we've seen in like ASER reports and all which we've covered. Class 5 students are not able to do simple arithmetic of class 2, subtraction of 2 digits of class 2. Things like these we've seen. And for this, the government has introduced, I would say, play-based learning or toy-based learning to enhance the learning outcomes in the formative years till class 2. There are no books now according to the new National Education Policy of 2020. So, this is something which needs to be taken care of. Then there is a gap existing between the existing skill sets and the requirement of the industry. Industry requires this level of skill sets. You have this level of skill sets. So there is this gap. This gap makes you unemployable or an inefficient employee, which the companies won't retain you for long if you don't learn those skill sets. So these are the challenges in front. Now, what does the committee need to do? First of all, the committee needs to create a multifaceted approach. It should not only restrict itself to population growth. The factors impacting population growth, health or education or skills, all these things, nutrition, all these things should be considered. Learnings from the past. No policy should be made and implemented in silos. Means in isolation you cannot make any policy, especially if that issue in itself is very much interconnected. It should adopt a comprehensive approach since these challenges are interconnected. Data collection should be prompt, efficient and in real time. Post collection of data, effective data analysis tools should be utilized for analyzing that data, giving the outcomes for formulating policy recommendations to the government. So this should be there. This particular committee should be tech savvy, we can say. The focus should be on sustainable growth of population. Learning should be there from China. It should not be like we emphasize on population growth so much that our population starts to reduce. This is something which is not a healthy practice. Population should grow, but there should be a sustainable growth. That is what it should focus on. So learnings from China should definitely be taken into account. Collaboration with international organizations such as United Nations Population Division, World Bank, and academic institutions can provide access to global best practices and technical expertise. Technical expertise in analyzing data, collection of data, storing data, or global best practices for sustainable population growth and all these can be considered. So this committee needs to be very dynamic, open-minded. Then only it will be able to come out with proper solutions and recommendations. Else, it will be just like the committees of the past. But we don't need committees of the past because we never dreamt of being a developed country in the past, but now we are dreaming. So we need robust recommendations and practical recommendations from this committee. With this, I end today's session. I will be meeting you tomorrow now with more such informative news pieces. Till then, you guys keep studying, keep reading, keep writing, and most importantly, keep revising. Namaste. Jai Hind.